Why would I pay to not have to deal with much bigger problems? So I'm actually up here in Brisbane at the moment. Come up from Byron, driven 2 hours, and I brought my son. Now, my son discovered surfing. It's epic. It's so cool. It's the greatest thing of all time for a 15-year-old to discover surfing. But about 4, 5, or 6 weeks ago, not really sure, he was surfing and he got hit by somebody else's board right in the shin. Now, what's interesting is he dismissed that. He was like, it's just a small wound. It won't do anything. But it wasn't dealt with at the time. And slowly it opened up and became a bit like a little crater. Probably about a 1.5 centimeter diameter crater right on the tibia. And I had a look at it. It was brought to my attention 4 weeks in after this had happened. And Sammy's like, it doesn't seem to be healing. And I look at this thing, and down the bottom, for all money, looked like tibia. I'm like, geez, this isn't the greatest thing of all time to have the tibia exposed. And what would have been great was, at the time, if he'd known, to either mention it to me or to actually get some help. Both of those would have resulted in a clean wound, potentially a couple of steri strips. The wound heals up, and we're not in Brisbane right now. So the question is, why am I even here? Well, I was a little bit concerned. I'm not very excited for my son to have osteomyelitis. I'm not willing or excited for him to have 2 weeks or months of antibiotics trying to treat an infection in the bone. And so I sent the photos to a buddy of mine. I'm like, hey, what do you think? He's orthopedics. He's like, dude, I would definitely get that seen by plastics. And so we are in the car, we came up, and we've got a meeting in a couple of minutes' time just to get that done, to get it looked at, to get it resolved. And I want to pay for that so I don't have to deal with a chronic infection in my son's leg. And yes, it costs 2 hours of driving, plus the parking, plus the cost of the plastic surgeon's consult, plus whatever dressings or surgery we need. But I am buying peace of mind. I'm buying what would it be called? Not having to deal with the regrets? Imagine I go forward 4 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, it's not healed and it's spread. And I look back to that choice right now and say, gee, I wish I had invested the time, money, and energy to get in the car and drive to Brisbane to get it seen. Now, what's curious and what's difficult for us in GP is that many people do not have this mindset, that they have been trained over years for free medicine. And now that general practice is largely unviable as a free service and people have to pay, they are choosing the gamble. The gamble that in 4 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, maybe it's not that, maybe that's not short, but maybe it's 6 months, 2 years, 5 years' time. Instead of being happy, healthy, their body in a good shape, they're instead dealing with a diabetic ulcer, or they're dealing with a heart attack. And they didn't want to pay the $45 or the $60 or even the $1,000 over the year to invest into their own health, and instead they find themselves in 5 years' time looking back with the regret, thinking, gee, that wasn't a very good choice. And part of this is us training our patients about the power of preventative medicine, which we've always been about in general practice. That by seeing a GP regularly, you avoid the difficult situations. But as the question comes, will you pay? Will you invest in yourself? And people are saying, no, 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 no. I'm going to keep my Netflix. I'm going to keep my Disney Plus. And I get that some people truly are struggling, but this hopefully is still a relatively affluent country. We are a first world country. And perhaps there's some tough decisions, and it's like, you know what, I can't hold on where I'm living. I've got to move further out so that I can have secure abode, have a roof over my head, but I've also got enough money to look after my body. And these are difficult conversations. I've been dealing with them in my practice in Mullumbimby for years, watching people try and hold. In case you don't know, Byron Bay is ridiculously expensive. It's as expensive as eastern suburbs of Sydney. Except the jobs don't pay so well, and there's hardly any housing. And so people would try and hold, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot of resources or an inordinate amount of creativity to survive there. And so people would have to make the decision to say, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I can't live here anymore. I'm going to move out of the area to go to somewhere cheaper, so that they had enough money in order to pay for things like their health. You see, what is the point of having a Netflix account or a nice car if they have a heart attack in 5 years' time, or they get diabetes because they've been eating junk food? One of the benefits of Byron Shire is that we have very little fast food. And one of the consequences of that is that there is relatively little obesity. It's a very interesting correlation. And people invest into their health. They make the choices about what they're going to eat. And this investment mindset is something that must be translated to our patients and say, hey, no different than you would invest into your education, you must invest into your health. You only get one body, and sometimes things can't be repaired. It is possible that my son's leg could degrade further into osteomyelitis, into amputation. It's unlikely. He's a 15-year-old male. I get it. But is it possible? Yes, it is. Through neglect or lack of knowledge or some other reason, suddenly there's a major problem and he loses his leg. Is it the end of the world? No. Sun still comes up, no doubt about that. But in a choice between having his leg and not having his leg, making the investment makes sense. Making that investment not to have to deal with all of these problems, some of which cannot be recovered from. So this is a mindset that we have a responsibility to instill into our patients and say, hey, what are you investing into? You're not paying me as a doctor. You're investing into your own health to ensure that you do not have to deal with serious and difficult consequences that may or may not be fixable in the future. And it's your choice. If they choose to make the investment, great. If they choose not to and say, you know what, I can't afford that right now, but in 5 years' time they look back with regret, that is on them. This is a difficult experience for people used to getting everything for free. But the problem with free is that people don't change often. When they don't invest anything, there is no requirement for them to say, you know what, I'm all in. I'm making a change. I'm putting my time, effort, and money on the line to change. When it's free, often nothing much happens. And it's not until the heart attack comes or the stroke comes or the diabetes diagnosis or the cancer diagnosis that finally they change. But by then it is too late. They failed to heed the warning of the doctor, of you, of me, saying, hey, just to let you know, I've seen this before. I can see into the future. I've seen you in 5 years' time, and if you keep behaving like this, then you will have some serious and difficult problems to deal with. And either you can make the decision now to make the changes and start exercising, start stretching, start getting massage, physio, start being disciplined around your diet, start getting better sleep, start meditating, or you can deal with these much bigger problems later on. And this is the message of general practice, that we are in the game of prevention, not having to deal with problems. And it's hard because often they may not even appreciate what they did not have to go through. That in 5 years' time, because they made those investments into their health, they didn't get those problems. And it's easy for them to forget and think that perhaps there wasn't much value. And yet, if you could look across at the other version of themselves that didn't make the investment and see the condition of their body, condition of their suffering, the pain, the disability, then perhaps they would look and say, oh my goodness, if only I could go back in time and make a better choice. All right, that's all I got for you. I'm going to go take my son to the doctor's appointment. I'm going to get this looked at, and I'll let you know how the outcome goes tomorrow. All right, look after yourselves. Catch you soon.